Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
It's our News Watch, and we're watching some research that's being done on dementia.
Yep.
Ooh, that's a scary thing to get. As you get older, sometimes your brain just stops working like it used to, and you forget everybody. You forget who you are and your family members. Dementia would be tough to have. Do you have anyone in your family that's had dementia, Tom?
My mother's kind of having some memory problems.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's kind of some early signs of dementia.
Maybe, yeah.
Is there a difference between dementia and, say, Alzheimer's disease or something?
Yes, there is, but it's pretty technical, so I can't tell you what it is.
They're similar,
yeah.
But basically as we grow older, we lose the ability to remember certain things. Well, now there's some kind of game that you can actually play on your phone, your iPhone, or your Android device. It's called Sea Hero Quest. That's one of the news stories we're going to be talking about today.
Interesting, huh?
And we're also going to be talking about the death of the Cuban leader Fidel Castro. So those are two stories we're looking at in today's News Watch. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's talk about these two articles after we hear them read aloud.
Free mobile game helps dementia research. Neuroscientists and game developers have created a mobile game that may help diagnose the early signs of dementia. Since its launch in May 2016, thousands of people worldwide have played Sea Hero Quest. The game tests players' ability to navigate and remember specific locations. Players' age, gender, and nationality are recorded to help researchers create a picture of the normal levels of these abilities across a wide range of subjects. Early signs of dementia include a loss of spatial awareness and the ability to navigate. But since this ability naturally diminishes with age, it's hard to tell what a normal level of loss is. The game data helps establish the normal baseline against which they can measure possible cases of dementia in the future. So far, researchers have learned that our navigational skill starts to worsen at age 19. They also found that on the whole, men tend to be better navigators than women, although this could be due to the fact that males tend to have more experience with video games.
World reacts to Fidel Castro's death. Fidel Castro, the communist revolutionary leader who became the president of Cuba, died at age 90 in November 2016. Castro left a mixed legacy. He was revered by many for his tireless efforts to improve Cuban society, but others condemned him for abusing human rights during his time in power. Fidel Castro fought against the corrupt Cuban government of the 1950s, eventually overthrowing it in January 1959. He then became prime minister and set about reforming the country. Many industries were nationalized so that they could be free from U.S. economic influence, and Castro pushed to end illiteracy and infant mortality by opening more schools and hospitals. However, he also cracked down on political opposition, causing many Cubans to flee. His beliefs and practices made Cuba a problem for the U.S. throughout the Cold War, causing the U.S. to cut off trade and diplomatic relations with the island. Castro fell ill in 2008 and handed power to his brother Raul. He will be remembered not only as a revolutionary hero, but also for denying his people their democratic rights.
Let's look at our first news story first. The headline reads, Free mobile game helps dementia research. The one thing that kind of jumps out at me is that it's free. You don't have to pay for it. Although I have a couple of mobile games on my phone that are free. They're not very interesting, but they're free. This one is actually going to help research and scientists who are studying dementia. We talked about how dementia is a chronic or persistent disorder. It affects your brain. And typically it comes on later in life, although I had a friend whose mother had dementia at 54. So you never know, but typically older people start to experience memory loss, and some of them do have dementia.
You reminded me, my mother's mother, my grandmother, actually suffered from that. She didn't know who anybody was before she passed away.
My great-grandma was like that, too.
Can happen to the best of us. But we've got a game now that you can play on your iPhone called Sea Hero Quest. Let's find out what this is all about. We've got some neurosciences here. Neuroscientists and game developers have created a mobile game that may help diagnose the early signs of dementia. A neuroscientist is somebody who studies the brain, basically.
And the nervous system.
Yeah, nerves and those connections. And what are they called? Synaptic lapses or something like that. In any case, they're working together here with game developers, people who come up with games to play online or on your iPhone. And now they've come up with a mobile game that will, or at least may help diagnose the early signs of dementia. To diagnose here is what a doctor does to try to figure out what's wrong with you. Diagnose, that's the verb. Diagnosis is the noun. What's your diagnosis, doctor? What have I got? And here we're using it as a verb, and they want to diagnose the early signs of dementia. They want to identify those signs.
That's right. Since its launch in May 2016, that's when the game first became available publicly. Thousands of people worldwide have played this game called Sea Hero Quest. So you're at sea, it sounds like you're on the ocean, and you're a hero looking for something. A quest is when you're looking for something. And the game tests players' ability to navigate and remember specific locations. Interesting. If you're trying to navigate your way somewhere, it just means you kind of plan the way you're going to get from one location to another. You plan your course, and you might be aboard a ship, or you might be on a plane, or maybe you're just in a car and you're using GPS to navigate your way to the place where you want to go.
Exactly. If you're in Taichung, for example, and you want to go to Hualien, and you want to get to Hualien, you need to navigate a way to get there, which can be difficult for people in Taichung because the Central Cross Island Highway has been closed for many years. So you got to figure out another way to get to Hualien. You've got to navigate your way there. But in this particular game, you're navigating from point A to point B, and you also need to remember specific locations. Specific here just means it's clearly defined and clearly identified. Sometimes people can be too vague, and so you want them to be specific. Please tell me exactly what you want. Be specific.
Yeah, or I often hear be more specific. Yeah, so be
there are
exact.
There are levels of specificity.
That's a tough word to say, isn't it? Specificity.
Yeah, I'm surprised I was able to come up with it myself, but again, specific here is an adjective. Exact locations, specific locations, and try to get yourself to that place.
Yeah. So players' age, their gender, and nationality are all recorded when you play this game. They want to know how old you are, if you're male or female, that's your gender, and your nationality, of course, is the country that you come from. And those are recorded in their data. And this helps the researchers create a picture of what the normal, quote-unquote, normal levels of these abilities are across a wide range of subjects. So it's hard to tell what's normal unless you do a lot of research, a lot of study to find out what the average is. I think that average would probably turn out to be the normal level.
And these subjects are the people being studied, not subjects of study in school like mathematics or geography, stuff like that, but the actual people participating in the research. And early signs of dementia include a loss of spatial awareness and the ability to navigate. Spatial just means having to do with space, where you are, what's up, what's down, what's left, what's right, and stuff like that. You kind of lose your ability to know that, and also the ability to navigate. And this ability naturally diminishes with age, and because it does that, it's hard to tell what the normal level of loss is. To diminish means to gradually decrease, to lose a quantity to become less and less.
Yeah, a lot of things diminish as you age. Athletes find that out very quickly, that once you get into your 30s, your great skills start diminishing.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it happens as we get older, our bodies get older. So the game data, that's all that information they're collecting. It's called data, and it's a plural noun. It helps establish the normal And again, we're using those quotation marks because, who knows what's normal. But normal baseline against what they can measure possible cases of dementia in the future. So you're going to measure against something else. A baseline, at least in research, is kind of that minimum or starting point that they use to compare against other things. And that's what they're trying to find, that normal baseline that they can go and compare against different possible cases of dementia in the future.
So far, researchers have learned that our navigational skill starts to worsen at age 19. Navigational has to do with navigating, navigational skill or skills, the ability to navigate. Gee, when you're 19, it starts to go downhill.
It's interesting, huh?
It starts to diminish.
It's like kids are better at it than adults or something.
True. I guess they also say that about acquiring a language after 15 or so. You're never going to lose an accent when you start a foreign language. If you learn before 15, you'll probably be able to speak it without an accent. They also found that on the whole, men tend to be better navigators than women, although this could be due to the fact that males tend to have more experience with video games. Tend to, which means this tends to be the case or this seems to be the case. You see it more often than not. Yeah, I guess men pretty much know more than women about getting from point A to point B.
See, and I disagree with this completely because it's always men who get lost driving and the women that have to stop and ask where to go. So I'm actually much better than any of my boyfriends have ever been.
This is arguable, but in any case, for the most part, men pretty much know how to get around better than women do. I will challenge you. What's
on the
best way?
Video games, yeah.
Maybe because they play more video games.
They definitely waste more time playing video games than women do.
While women are wasting time on social networking websites sending cute stickers to each other.
They're probably taking care of their families.
Okay, fine. With those stickers. Okay. Well, we'll move on now and talk about Fidel Castro now. We'll take a break first, so please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny. 今天我们要看的是第9单元。现在呢，很流行玩 mobile games。Mobile game 就是手游。那手游到底有什么好处？他这边告诉我们，它可能可以帮助失智症的研究。好，我们看到失智症这个字 dementia， 那怎么一回事？这边就提到了，他说有科学家们跟游戏开发者，他现在创造了这种可以帮助诊断失智症早期征兆的手机游戏。好，那他发行的时间是2016年5月，我们看到 launch 这个字，它在用动词的时候，这个字就是指你发射火箭啦，或者是你如果讲开始一个计划，你也可以用 launch， 它有那种 set out 的意思，不过这边当作名词来用，就是它的发行。好，它呢之后就变成哇，好多人都玩过了，这个游戏的名称叫做 Sea Hero Quest， 我们中文翻成航海英雄。那我们说过这是一个 mobile game， 也就是一个手游的游戏。不过呢，这个游戏基本上它的目的，它是可以测试出来说玩家他的导航还有他记忆特定位置的能力如何。当然，你如果玩这个游戏，你自己本身的资料，包括年龄、性别、国籍都会被记录。不过他说到，他有一种目的，也就是说他要建立某一个所谓的 normal levels，也就是玩的人呢，他们这些的平均水平可以建立一个常数来，透过有这么广泛、这么多元的这种实验对象。我们知道 a wide range of 就是范围很广，因为它讲的是指那些实验对象，他们的年龄分布也好，国籍分布也好，性别分布也好，非常的广泛。不过我们要注意到 subjects 这个字 subject 它是一个学科的意思，或者是主题。不过如果用在实验室里面，这个 subjects 其实就是指你的实验对象。下一段呢，他提到什么是失智症，那他后面就说了，这个游戏呢，就是为了要建立一个所谓的正常的底线。他说到是一个 normal baseline， 然后跟它相对 against which they can measure possible cases of dementia in the future. 当然就是好像有一个参数一样，相对的它就可以以此来判断这个失智症可能的病例。好，那后面呢，他告诉我们说，这说起来有一点让人惊讶，一般人我们的导航能力竟然是19岁的时候就开始变差了，而且他还告诉我们说，一般说起来 on the whole 就是一般而言，男性其实呢在导航能力上是比较强的，不过他也讲可能的原因是什么？ This could be due to the fact that males tend to have more experience with video games. The fact that 我们知道 the fact 就是事实了，那后面有一个 that 子句，它其实是一个同位语的子句。当我们讲同位语子句，意思就是说它的内容就是等同于 the fact.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi guys, welcome back. We're talking about news that's been out there in the last couple of months. We talked about a new video game called Sea Hero Quest. Now we're going to move on to some political news. If you keep track of political news, you probably noticed that Fidel Castro, who was the leader of Cuba, passed away. He was really old, Tom. I kept expecting him to die maybe 20 years ago, but he held on until 2008 when he became so sick he had to turn over governing to his brother. But let's talk about Fidel Castro.
Yeah, he outlasted so many U.S. presidents, but in any case, the world did react to his death, and some people reacted with joy, and some people reacted with sorrow. Let's get to it. Fidel Castro, the communist revolutionary leader who became the president of Cuba, died at age 90 in November 2016. So that was a couple of months ago. You may remember that. It was big in the news. Communist means having to do with communism. Like the Kim guys there in Korea, they're communists. Castro's a communist. And what's the other communist country in the world now besides China, Cuba, and North Korea?
Can't think of any others.
There might be one or two.
I know that Venezuela is kind of turning that way.
Or socialist. Or
yeah,
whatever.
so they kind of take all the power from the people and they put it into a central leader. So he was the leader or president of Cuba. And he lived to a ripe old age, we might say, 90. Castro left a mixed legacy. When you die, what you leave behind, what your life produced is your legacy. If you're an entertainer, maybe the songs that you sang or the songs that you wrote are your legacy. He left a mixed legacy. As Tom mentioned, some people were happy when he died and some people were sad. He was revered by many for his tireless efforts to improve Cuban society. If you're revered, many people respect you, they look up to you, they might even worship you. But he was revered by many because he just didn't quit trying to improve Cuban society. That's what tireless means. You keep going no matter how tired you are.
Or if you're not tired at all, you're just constantly doing it. So he had these tireless, ceaseless efforts to improve Cuban society. And some people praise him for that, while others condemned him for abusing human rights during his time in power. To condemn here just means you basically disapprove of somebody. You say what they're doing is wrong. No, he was not doing things right. They condemned him. They criticized him for abusing human rights. And if you abuse something, you use someone for your own purposes, and usually those people suffer because of that.
That's right. Well, in the next paragraph, it starts out by saying that Castro fought against the corrupt Cuban government that was there in the 1950s, long before most of us were around. If you're a corrupt government, it means you're willing to take money from people in order to do what they want. So you're not being honest. honest. Government officials aren't supposed to be taking money from citizens and then doing what the citizens want. But he fought against the corrupt government they had back in the 50s, and he eventually was able to overthrow it. In January 1959, they had a revolution. If you overthrow a government, you kick out the government that's in power and you take over at that point. It's usually through violence, I want to say.
Yeah, that's supposedly what happened, in 1911 in China?
Yeah.
The nationalists overthrew the Qing dynasty and established the Republic of China. So they overthrew that government, and this is what happened in Cuba. He overthrew the corrupt government, and he took over in January of 1959. Now, he then became prime minister and set about reforming the country. Set about means you start doing something. To reform means to change things supposedly for the better, and many industries were nationalized so that they could be free from U.S. economic influence. Now, if something's nationalized, it's basically controlled by the central government. And a number of things here in Taiwan used to be nationalized, like I think the telecommunications infrastructure was nationalized, and later they made it private, or there used to be nationalized bus service or something, and nationalized broadcasting, and later they privatized it. So now you've got all sorts of different bus companies and TV stations and telecommunications companies, etc.
Yeah, there can be competition. If the country owns all the industries, there's no competition. So if you talk about economic anything, it just has something to do with money. And they were trying to lessen the U.S.'s influence in terms of trade and economics. So that was what they said. So Castro pushed to end something called illiteracy. Illiteracy means people who are unable to read. So he wanted to educate the citizens there so that everybody could read, and also lower the infant mortality. Infant mortality is when you're keeping track of how many babies die before they reach even 1 year old. So if your country has bad medical care, a lot of the infants are dying before they even reach the age of 1. So he wanted to lower that rate, and he did these two things by opening more schools, helping people go to school and read, and also opening more hospitals so that babies could live to adulthood.
That's right. We want more babies coming from Cuba because they grow up to become great baseball players and jazz musicians. We certainly don't have enough of those in the world. And, of course, he also cracked down on political opposition. It says, however he did this, if you crack down on somebody, you throw the book at them, you go by the rule of law, and if people opposed him, people who oppose something, they are the opposition, or the power that's not in power, or the party that's not in power.
Opposition party, yeah.
Exactly, that's the opposition. So he cracked down on them. He caused many Cubans to flee because they basically did not have political freedom. If you did not agree with Castro, he didn't like you, and he put you in jail.
Or killed you.
Or tortured you, or whatever. So lots of people fled, and I think they all headed to Miami.
His beliefs and practices made Cuba a problem for the U.S. throughout the Cold War. The Cold War was when the U.S. was in opposition to some of the communist countries out there, Cuba being one, the Soviet Union being another. And that caused the U.S. to cut off trade and diplomatic relations with the island. So they would no longer allow U.S. citizens to sell things to Cuba or to allow their diplomats, there was no embassy in Cuba from the United States. Diplomatic relations means you've got representatives from your country visiting other countries around the world to make sure everything's cool between you. All of those things were stopped, though, because Cuba turned communist and the U.S. opposed communism.
And Castro fell ill in 2008. That means he started to get sick way back then, and handed power to his brother Raul. And Castro will be remembered not only as a revolutionary hero, but also for denying his people their democratic rights. Deny here means that you don't admit to something, but
you refuse somebody something, huh?
Exactly,
no.
In that particular essence of the word, yes, you don't let them have something that they should have.
Yeah, and one of the things that I know people used to say is, if Cuba's so great, why do you have to force everyone to stay there? Cubans couldn't travel around the world. They were stuck in their own country. So he had some good things about his rule and some bad things. We'll let you decide which was better.
At least they had good cigars there.
Yeah, right now, though, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher.
好，我们来看第二则新闻。第二则新闻跟政治人物卡斯楚有关。好，他呢在2016年的11月过世了，而之后留下来的，他说到是 Castro left a mixed legacy。Legacy 代表遗产，但是它是一个 mixed legacy， 换句话说，有好有坏。现在我们就来探讨一下哦。其实在古巴这边的社会里面，他们是很尊敬他的，但是其实另外一方面来看，他不好的就是侵害了人权，这就是 a mixed legacy。我们再来看下面就说到了，提到他在1950年代呢，他当时对抗腐败政府。那后面这一句话里面1950年代后面的逗点接着写 eventually overthrowing it in January 1959。这个地方注意到了吗？这个句构上其实是一个分词构句，说到他最后在1959年1月的时候推翻了古巴政府。不过 overthrowing 这个分词当然是现在分词，那我们知道如果我们把一个连接词去掉的时候，后面这一句就可以变成分词修饰语。那如果你把它连接词接起来，比如说在这里你补上一个 and eventually overthrew it， 那其实就解释了这个分词构句的来源。像这个句构哦，其实在这一篇新闻文章里面它还出现蛮多次的。大家如果往下读，下面会发现还有一个地方，因为他提到了说当时卡斯楚哦，他改革国家，可是后面就写了However, he also cracked down on political opposition, causing many Cubans to flee. 好，我们看到这句话，就是在这里 crack down on， 这 crack down 就表示打击，他呢严厉的打击政治上的反对派。然后接下来看到逗点 causing many Cubans to flee， 这个 causing 就是跟刚刚这边的 overthrowing 其实是一样的用法，也就是它是一个分词构句。如果你呢也把连接词 and 摆回来，那你也可以说 and caused many Cubans to flee。他说到打击政府，然后他就导致了很多古巴人逃离。除了这个之外，再往下读，下面还有一个句子，他也说到了。他说 His beliefs and practices made Cuba a problem for the U.S. throughout the Cold War。 后面的逗点又来了 causing the U.S. to cut off trade and diplomatic relations with the island。 这个 causing 看到了吗？它也是一样，是一个分词构句。 OK， 我们今天的说明就到这边结束，我们下次见。
That's it. Thank you for joining us. We hope you learned a little bit more about what's going on in the news. At least you can talk about it more in English now. We hope you'll join us again soon. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.